What if the person you trusted the most was secretly planning your demise? What if everything you knew about them, every piece of their carefully crafted image, was a lie? Meet Matthew Donovan, a man admired by the public as the epitome of success, a self-made billionaire, a philanthropist, and a respected entrepreneur. But behind closed doors, a much darker side of Matthew was lurking, one that would lead to a horrific tragedy. We uncover the chilling truth of how a seemingly perfect man's secret life shattered everything and left a trail of devastation in its wake. Matthew Donovan had it all. From the outside, his life appeared flawless. A billionaire tech mogul with a sprawling mansion in the Hamptons, an enviable marriage to his beautiful wife, Sarah, and two perfect children, Evan and Lily. His company, Donovan Enterprises, was a leader in its field. He was hailed as a business genius, and everyone who met him thought he was a man of integrity and vision. But deep down, there were cracks in the facade. Behind his polished public persona was a man consumed by greed, obsession, and a hunger for power. No one could have predicted how it would all spiral into an unimaginable tragedy. It all began with a single phone call. A report came in that a violent crime had occurred at Donovan's mansion. When police arrived, they were met with a scene that would change the course of their investigation forever. Matthew's wife, Sarah Donovan, was found dead. Her body was discovered in the lavish study, an apparent victim of an execution-style murder. But what shocked investigators more than the brutal act itself was the discovery that Sarah's death wasn't an isolated incident. Matthew, who was once considered a respected figure, had a long list of secrets that came to light in the investigation. Secret bank accounts, illicit business dealings, and, most shockingly, a string of suspicious deaths linked to his closest associates. The timeline of events leading up to Sarah's death was chilling. Matthew had been under immense pressure. His business empire was on the verge of collapse due to mounting debts, and several of his former partners had begun to talk. The tension was rising. It was clear to investigators that Matthew had a motive, but they needed evidence. His alibi seemed too perfect. He was away on business the night of Sarah's murder. But a small detail would soon unravel his entire defense. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something truly disturbing. Matthew's obsession with power wasn't just limited to his business dealings. He had been involved in a series of shady dealings that went far beyond the corporate world. Witnesses came forward, revealing that Matthew had a secret relationship with several women over the years. One of them, an ambitious young woman named Rebecca, had been discovered dead just months before Sarah. The true connection between the two murders was uncovered when forensic experts revealed a startling piece of evidence. DNA found at the crime scenes linked Matthew directly to the victims. His alibis began to fall apart as the truth slowly began to surface. But the investigation didn't stop there. Further digging revealed that Matthew had been manipulating his closest allies for years, pulling strings behind the scenes, using fear and coercion to keep his empire intact. The investigation reached its boiling point when Matthew was finally arrested. His carefully curated life came crashing down in front of the public eye. The question on everyone's mind was, how had a man who seemed to have everything been capable of such horrific acts? Matthew Donovan's fall from grace was swift and shocking. His once admired reputation lay in ruins, and the world was left questioning how far the reach of his lies and deceit truly went. But was justice truly served? Or was this just the beginning of a far deeper conspiracy? Was Matthew a victim of the very system he built? Matthew Donovan had managed to live a double life for years. But once he was arrested, the walls of his empire came crumbling down. Investigators found that Sarah's murder wasn't just a crime of passion. It was part of a much larger, carefully orchestrated plan. Sarah had discovered Matthew's secret dealings. His business was on the brink of collapse, and to secure his wealth and power, Matthew had been planning to eliminate anyone who stood in his way, including his wife. He was obsessed with control. Everything had to go his way. If someone posed a threat to his plans, they were gone. He didn't care who they were. As the investigation continued, they uncovered a hidden network of shady business deals, offshore accounts, and blackmail that extended far beyond Sarah's murder. His company, Donovan Enterprises, had been a front for money laundering, and Matthew had ties to some of the most dangerous people in the world. It wasn't until a breakthrough discovery in Matthew's private office that the full extent of his crimes came to light. Among his personal documents, investigators found a journal, a detailed account of his manipulations, lies, and the steps he took to cover his tracks. Matthew had planned Sarah's death months in advance. The affair, the lies, the fake alibis, all part of his strategy to distract from his criminal activities. He had even arranged for a trusted friend to take the fall if the plan went awry. But it was Sarah's discovery of the truth that sealed her fate. Sarah had been quietly investigating Matthew's financials. She had discovered irregularities and was preparing to expose him. But before she could act, Matthew turned on her. A twisted betrayal led to her brutal murder, staged to look like a random act of violence. But there was one thing Matthew didn't anticipate. Sarah had made copies of everything she found. The truth she uncovered didn't die with her. It was carefully hidden, waiting for someone to find it. As the trial began, the courtroom was filled with tension. The prosecution laid out its case. Matthew Donovan was not only responsible for Sarah's death, but he was also the mastermind behind a series of brutal cover-ups and criminal activities. But even with overwhelming evidence against him, Matthew remained calm, almost too calm. He sat there, staring ahead, as the jury deliberated. His cold demeanor raised even more questions. Was he really a man who had just lost control, or was there something more sinister at play? As the defense team scrambled to find a loophole, a shocking twist unfolded. In the final days of the trial, an anonymous source came forward with even more explosive information that could change everything. This source revealed that Matthew had not acted alone. There were others, powerful figures who had helped him cover his tracks, people who had been involved in Sarah's murder. This revelation left the public in disbelief. The case was far from over. There were still pieces of the puzzle that hadn't been put together. The trial of Matthew Donovan is far from its conclusion, and with the new revelations, everything we thought we knew is being called into question. Was Matthew truly the mastermind, or was he merely a puppet in a much larger game? The shocking twists, hidden conspiracies, and devastating betrayals continue to unfold. But one thing is clear. The truth about Sarah's death and the sinister world Matthew built will haunt everyone involved forever. As the investigation continued to unravel Matthew Donovan's life, it quickly became clear that Sarah's death was just the tip of the iceberg. Investigators found that Matthew's network of corruption, deception, and betrayal reached further than anyone had suspected, connecting him to some of the world's most powerful and dangerous people. But there was one name that kept coming up, someone whose involvement had been carefully concealed throughout the entire investigation. The name was Reed Westbrook, a well-known international financier with deep ties to the criminal underworld. He was Matthew's mentor, business partner, and, as the investigation would reveal, the true mastermind behind Sarah's murder. Reed had been pulling the strings behind Matthew's rise to power. The two had made a pact, one that involved everything from laundering money to eliminating anyone who stood in their way. Reed, a man known for his ruthless nature, had been manipulating Matthew for years, using him as a pawn in a much bigger game. When Sarah began digging into Matthew's financials and threatened to expose them both, it was Reed who ordered her death, using Matthew as the perfect scapegoat. Matthew was just too blinded by his own ambition to see who was truly pulling the strings. But Reed didn't just want Sarah dead. He wanted to completely take over Donovan Enterprises and erase all traces of his own involvement. To do this, Reed set in motion a plan that would ensure Matthew's destruction. What Reed didn't expect, however, was that one small, overlooked detail would bring everything crashing down. A small device, a hidden recorder, was found in Matthew's office, one that Sarah had planted there before her death. It contained crucial conversations between Matthew and Reed, discussing their illegal activities and the planning of Sarah's murder. This discovery, along with the anonymous tip-off that led investigators to Reed, was enough to seal their fate. But the conspiracy was far from over. The final courtroom drama was nothing short of explosive. Reed Westbrook was arrested in a high-profile operation that stunned the financial world. His connections with governments, multinational corporations, and criminal syndicates made him a dangerous man to take down. But as the trial unfolded, Reed remained composed, offering no emotion as the evidence against him mounted. His cold and calculating nature was undeniable. It was clear he was a man who had orchestrated Matthew's rise and fall by manipulating him like a puppet. Matthew, in his defense, claimed he was a mere pawn, someone too far and over his head to understand the true scope of Reed's influence. But as the trial continued, cracks began to form in his testimony. Matthew's lies were exposed, and it became clear that he wasn't the innocent victim he made himself out to be. In an unexpected twist, one of Reed's closest associates turned on him, providing testimony that sealed the deal. As the final verdict was read, the courtroom held its breath. Matthew Donovan was sentenced to life in prison for his role in Sarah's murder and his part in the vast criminal empire that had been exposed. Reed Westbrook, the true mastermind, was convicted of orchestrating Sarah's death and a range of other crimes. His sentence even more severe, given the international scope of his actions. The world was left to pick up the pieces of this tangled web of lies, corruption, and deceit. But one thing remained clear: no one is ever truly beyond the reach of the truth. Justice, in its own way, was served, but at a terrible cost. However, as we close this chapter of Matthew and Reed's dark legacy, we're left with one haunting question: how many more lives are out there, sacrificed on the altar of ambition and power? And who else is hiding behind masks, pretending to be something they're not? We want to hear from you. What do you think of this case? Was Matthew simply a victim of his own greed, or was he as much a mastermind as Reed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true crime stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about justice, morality, and deception.